The story begins not in America, but in Europe, in the grand halls of power, the blood-soaked battlefields of the Holy Land, and the secretive chambers where whispers of forbidden knowledge were exchanged. To understand the possibility of Templars in America, we must first understand who the Knights Templar were and why their story did not end with their persecution. The Knights Templar emerged in the 12th century at the height of the Crusades. They were warrior monks, sworn to defend pilgrims on their way to the Holy Land, but in truth they were much more than swords and shields. They became bankers, navigators, architects, and some say keepers of secrets too dangerous for the Church itself. At their height, the Templars controlled lands across Europe, fleets of ships, and a vast treasure whose true contents remain unknown. Some said it included relics from Solomon's temple, fragments of the true cross, even the Holy Grail itself. To the Church, this made them indispensable, but also dangerous, and so in the year 1307, on Friday the 13th, a date forever marked by superstition, the French king moved against them. Templars were arrested, tortured, and burned at the stake. Their Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, cursed his accusers with his dying breath. The order, it seemed, was destroyed. But here is where the mystery begins. Not all Templars were captured. Not all fleets were seized. In fact, on the eve of their downfall, much of the Templar navy vanished, disappearing into the fog of history. Ships unaccounted for, treasure unrecorded, and men who knew too much suddenly gone. Where did they go? Some say they sailed north to Scotland, finding refuge under Robert the Bruce, whose excommunication from Rome made him sympathetic to their cause. Others whisper of Templar banners flying in battles long after their supposed destruction, symbols resurfacing in places they should not be, and some legends claim that their ships went farther still, across the ocean, to lands barely known to medieval Europe. This is where the possibility of Templars in America takes root. For centuries, maps circulated in secret, maps that depicted coastlines not officially charted until much later. Stories arose of men who arrived in strange lands bearing the red cross of the temple. In the forests of New England, stone towers and carvings have been attributed to their presence. In Minnesota, a runestone with cryptic inscriptions tells of a medieval expedition that predates Columbus by over a century. Of course, historians dismiss many of these claims. They call them hoaxes, misinterpretations, or coincidences. But skeptics face one persistent problem: the sheer volume of anomalies, too many scattered clues, too many unanswered questions. Could all of them truly be fakes, or do they hint at a hidden chapter of history erased from official records, but preserved in stone? Symbol and story. Imagine the year 1312. The order is dissolved, its leaders scattered, its fleets missing. If you were a Templar knight, hunted by the most powerful king in Europe and condemned by the Pope himself, where would you go? You could run to Scotland. You could hide in Portugal. But if you had ships, maps, and forbidden knowledge of lands across the Atlantic, would you not seek refuge there, far from the reach of kings and bishops? The Templars were no strangers to the sea. Their fleets travelled between France, England, and the Mediterranean. See, they carried pilgrims and treasure across stormy waters. Some say they explored even beyond the Canary Islands, which were the edge of the known world at the time. To men like these, the Atlantic was not a barrier, it was an invitation. And so the theory takes shape that a secret exodus carried Templars westward into the unknown, where they might rebuild their order in silence. Perhaps they sought only safety. Perhaps they sought something more, a hidden land of promise, a new Jerusalem, where their secrets could remain untouched. As the centuries passed, legends of strange visitors echoed among native tribes. Some spoke of pale-skinned men who came from the sea, bearing crosses and speaking tongues not known to the tribes of the time. These stories, dismissed as myth, take on new meaning when placed beside the puzzle of the vanished Templar fleet. But the true weight of this mystery lies not in stories alone. It lies in stone towers, carved runes, cryptic maps, and artifacts that defy explanation, evidence that will unfold as our story continues. For now, we are left with questions. The Templars were destroyed, and yet they were not. Their ships vanished, their treasure disappeared, and their symbols linger in places no historian can fully explain. Did they truly reach America before Columbus? Or are these clues the result of coincidence, wishful thinking, and elaborate frauds? Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. Perhaps the line between myth and history is far thinner than we imagine. But one thing is certain: the silence of the Templars after their fall is more mysterious than their existence before it. And where there is silence, there are secrets waiting to be uncovered. And this, my friends, is only the beginning. For the story of the Templars in America is a labyrinth, one that twists through stone inscriptions, lost voyages, and a legacy that refuses to die. If the Templars truly reached the shores of America, they would have left behind traces, not in the form of castles and fortresses like in Europe, but in subtle, enigmatic markers, and scattered across the American landscape, from the windswept coasts of New England to the quiet forests of the Midwest, are puzzles carved in stone, puzzles that whisper of a forgotten voyage. One of the most famous of these is the so-called Newport Tower in Rhode Island. At first glance, it looks like a ruined windmill, a circular stone tower with 8 arched pillars. But beneath its weathered stones lies controversy. Some historians insist it was built in the 17th century by colonial settlers, yet others argue that its design is far older, bearing architectural similarities not to colonial mills, but to structures found in medieval Europe. The round arches, the peculiar orientation of its windows, and the masonry itself have drawn comparisons to Templar chapels and watchtowers. Could it be that the Newport Tower was not built by settlers at all, but by voyagers who arrived long before them, men who carried the knowledge of European stonecraft across the Atlantic? The mystery deepens when we look to the Kensington runestone discovered in Minnesota in 1898. A slab of grey stone carved with runic inscriptions. It tells of a group of Norsemen who journeyed into the heart of America in 1362, a century before Columbus. While some dismiss it as a hoax, others argue that its details, including linguistic features and weathering patterns, point to authenticity. What does this have to do with the Templars? The connection lies in the blending of Norse exploration with Templar secrecy. After all, the Templars had ties to the Norse world through trade, alliances, and shared enemies during the Crusades. If remnants of the Templar fleet sought new lands, could they have travelled alongside or even merged with Norse navigators who already knew fragments of the western seas? Imagine the scene: Templar ships fleeing persecution, guided not by guesswork but by ancient routes whispered among sailors. Routes that may have extended to Greenland, Vinland, and beyond. The runestone then becomes not just a relic of Norse exploration, but a possible clue that two worlds, Norse adventurers and exiled Templars, collided in the wilderness of America. But this is only one piece of the puzzle. Across New England, strange carvings have been found etched into stone ledges and boulders. Crosses of unfamiliar style, circles intersected by lines, symbols that do not match native traditions but echo the geometry of medieval Europe. One particularly striking carving is the Westford Knight in Massachusetts, a faint effigy of an armoured figure with a sword and shield. Though weathered almost to obscurity, some believe it represents a Templar knight, a silent sentinel etched into stone centuries before settlers arrived. Skeptics call it natural erosion, nothing more. But those who stand before the Westford Knight often feel the weight of something deliberate, as though a forgotten traveller left his mark upon the land, a memorial to a journey that few would ever know. And then there is the matter of coins. Medieval coins, both Norse and European, have surfaced in unlikely places across North America. Some were dismissed as lost curiosities, dropped by later collectors. But in isolated cases, the depth of the soil and the context of the finds suggest they may have lain undisturbed for centuries. Could these coins have travelled in the pockets of sailors long before Columbus? Even more compelling is the Vinland map, a controversial artifact that depicts parts of North America long before its official discovery. Though debates rage over its authenticity, the possibility remains that knowledge of these Western lands circulated quietly among secret networks in Europe. And who better to guard such forbidden knowledge than the Templars, men already skilled at concealing what they possessed? Consider, see too, the oral traditions of certain native tribes. Among some Algonquin and Iroquois groups, stories linger of pale strangers who arrived by sea, bearing crosses and strange banners. These accounts were dismissed as myth or later encounters reimagined. But in the context of the Templars' disappearance, such stories gain a haunting resonance. Could these strangers have been exiled knights seeking refuge far from the reach of kings and popes? At every turn, the official historians push back. They argue that the Newport Tower is colonial, that the Kensington runestone is a hoax, that the Westford Knight is nothing but erosion, and yet one cannot help but notice the patterns stone after stone, artifact after artifact, story after story, all pointing toward the same forbidden possibility. For skeptics, each clue can be explained away individually, but taken together, the weight of the evidence presses down like a heavy hand on the shoulders of history. Too many anomalies, too many whispers, too many shadows of men who should not have been here, but perhaps were. Picture it, a small group of Templar survivors, weary from exile, landing on unknown shores. They carry with them relics, maps, and a vision of a hidden sanctuary. They carve symbols into stone, not as conquest, but as testimony, proof that they had been here, even if the world would one day deny it. The Newport Tower, the runestone, the carvings, the coins. Each is a fragment of a mosaic that suggests the Templars did not vanish into the flames of Europe, but into the mists of America. And yet, this raises even deeper questions. If the Templars came to America, what were they seeking? Was it only refuge? Or was it something far greater? A treasure, a relic, or a secret that could not be hidden in Europe? Perhaps the answer lies not in the stones themselves, but in the legends that surround them. Legends of lost maps, sacred bloodlines, and treasures buried deep in the wilderness. Legends that point us toward the next stage of the journey, where Templar secrets and American soil intertwine in ways that defy explanation. For now, the stones remain silent, but silence, as we have learned, is where the Templars thrived, and in silence they may yet speak to us. Every legend of the Templars circles back to one tantalizing question. What treasure did they guard so fiercely? What knowledge was so dangerous that kings and popes feared its power? And if their ships truly sailed westward, did they carry that treasure with them? The stories are endless. Some say the Templars uncovered relics beneath the ruins of Solomon's temple during their years in Jerusalem. That beneath the sacred stones they found tunnels leading to chambers untouched since biblical times. There, according to rumor, they recovered relics of unimaginable importance, sacred texts, ancient artifacts, and perhaps even the Holy Grail itself. For centuries, writers and mystics have claimed the Templars possessed the Grail, not merely a cup, but a symbol of divine power or even a secret bloodline stretching back to Christ himself. Whether truth or myth, the Grail became inseparable from the Templar legacy. And if the knights were forced to flee Europe, it is only natural to imagine that their most sacred possession would sail with them. But the Grail was not the only treasure in their keeping. The Templars were Europe's first great bankers. Their wealth flowed from kings and peasants alike. They owned vast estates, cathedrals, and ships. Their fortune was said to rival that of nations. Yet when they were arrested in 1307, much of their treasure had vanished. Gold unaccounted for, relics missing, ledgers burned. Where did it all go? Some whisper of hidden vaults beneath Paris, emptied in the night before the raids. Others tell of convoys heading west towards secret ports. And always the same unanswered mystery remains: the missing fleet. Ships untracked, treasure unclaimed, men unaccounted for. Imagine those ships, their sails catching the cold Atlantic winds, bearing not only desperate fugitives, but a treasure that had to remain hidden at all costs. If America was their destination, then the wilderness of the New World became their vault, their sanctuary, their final refuge. One legend tells of Oak Island, a small tree-covered isle off the coast of Nova Scotia. There, in the late 1700s, a strange pit was discovered. As men dug, they found layers of timber stones carved with mysterious markings and hints of buried treasure. The deeper they dug, the more elaborate the construction seemed. A trap-laden vault designed to protect something of immense value. For over 2 centuries, treasure hunters have scoured Oak Island, spending fortunes, and in some cases losing lives, in pursuit of what might lie below. Theories abound: Spanish gold, pirate loot, or colonial riches. Yet one of the oldest and most enduring theories is that the Templars buried their treasure there. Perhaps even the Grail itself. What makes Oak Island compelling is not just the mystery of the pit, but the symbols found nearby: a cross carved into stone, alignments that echo sacred geometry, and patterns that resonate with Templar lore. Could it be that the missing fleet sailed not only to America, but specifically to hide their most guarded secret beneath an island fortress of earth and timber? The Oak Island enigma is far from the only story. Across North America, rumors persist of buried vaults, sacred relics, and hidden knowledge. Some claim the Templars sought not merely to preserve treasure, but to safeguard something greater. Knowledge of ancient wisdom, perhaps carried from Jerusalem itself. Consider this possibility. The Templars were not only knights and bankers, but seekers of forbidden truths. They studied alchemy, geometry, and astronomy. Their cathedrals were built upon precise alignments with celestial patterns. Could they have also sought to bring that knowledge to a new land, a land where it might remain untouched by inquisitors and kings? In this view, America was not just a refuge, it was a canvas, a place where sacred geometry could be laid into the very earth, where the Grail, whatever it truly was, could rest undisturbed, where the order could survive in silence until the time was right. The stories of the holy bloodline intertwine here as well. Some argue that the Grail was never a chalice, but a lineage, descendants of Christ, hidden and protected across generations. If the Templars were guardians of this secret, then bringing the bloodline to America would ensure its survival in a land far beyond papal reach. Is it coincidence that whispers of mysterious European visitors among native tribes often describe them as guardians, teachers, and protectors rather than conquerors? Of course, skeptics dismiss these theories as fantasy. To them, Oak Island is a natural sinkhole, the Newport Tower a mere windmill, and the Kensington runestone an elaborate prank. They argue that the treasure of the Templars was simply seized, scattered, or never existed in the first place. And yet, the persistence of these legends is hard to ignore. Why has the Oak Island mystery endured for centuries, attracting treasure hunters, presidents and scholars alike, why do stories of hidden vaults, lost fleets, and sacred relics continue to haunt the corners of history? Perhaps because deep down humanity senses that not all of history has been written in the open. Some chapters were meant to remain concealed, protected by silence and stone. The Templars, masters of secrecy, ensured that if their treasure survived, they would not be easily found. Picture it again, the year 1307. The night of the arrests, torches blazing, doors crashing down, knights dragged from their beds, yet out on the sea, sails rise under the cover of darkness. Ships filled with knights' gold and relics slip away into the black water. They do not sail east, where enemies wait. They sail west, into the unknown, carrying not only their treasure but their hope. Centuries later, a farmer in Nova Scotia stumbles upon a mysterious pit. A boy in Minnesota uncovers a runestone carved with strange symbols. A tower rises in Rhode Island, built in a style that seems centuries out of place. Each discovery a whisper, each clue a fragment of a story buried in silence. If the Templars did come to America, then they did so not only as exiles, but as guardians, guardians of something so great, so dangerous, that it had to be hidden in the most remote land the world had ever known. And so the legend of the Templar treasure is not just about gold or jewels. It is about secrets, secrets of faith, secrets of bloodlines, secrets of power that could reshape the world if revealed. But what exactly did they hide? Was it the Grail, ancient relics, or something far stranger? A knowledge that has been waiting, buried in the soil of America, for centuries. The answer lies not only in the treasures they may have carried, but in the sacred geometry of their symbols, the whispers of hidden maps, and the legacy they may have passed down through secret societies that rose long after their fall. For the Templars may have vanished from history books, but perhaps they did not vanish from history itself. If the Templars truly crossed the Atlantic, they may not have built cities, raised armies, or left behind kingdoms. Instead, their presence may have survived in whispers, in symbols, in ideas passed from one generation to the next. Their greatest legacy may not be treasure buried beneath the soil, but influence woven into the very fabric of the New World. Centuries after their supposed disappearance, new societies began to rise in Europe and America. Among them, none are more mysterious than the Freemasons. Their origins are debated. Some claim they grew from the guilds of medieval stonemasons, others that they emerged as a philosophical brotherhood in the 17th century. But hidden within their rituals and symbols are echoes of something older, something distinctly Templar. Consider the most famous emblem of the Masons, the square and compass, surrounding a mysterious letter, G. Yet in older rites, crosses, swords, and images of the temple appear again and again. Some degrees of Freemasonry directly reference the Knights Templar, with elaborate ceremonies claiming descent from the order. Is this only symbolic, a borrowing of a powerful myth? Or is it evidence that the Templars themselves, scattered and hunted, lived on under new names? If their ships reached America, could their traditions have seeped into the very societies that shaped the future United States? The possibility grows more intriguing when we look at the founding fathers, men like George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, and Paul Revere were all Freemasons. Their lodges echoed with ritual, secrecy, and symbolism, and when the United States was born, its symbols bore the fingerprints of that heritage. Look at the Great Seal of the United States, approved in 1782. On one side, the familiar eagle, but on the other, the unfinished pyramid with the all-seeing eye. A symbol dripping with layers of meaning. To some, it represents divine providence. To others, the influence of Masonic or even Templar tradition hidden in plain sight on the very currency of the nation. But why would the Templar spirit, centuries after their suppression, still resonate in a young America, perhaps because the ideals of the Templars, defiance of tyranny, pursuit of knowledge, loyalty to brotherhood over crown or church, matched perfectly with the revolutionary spirit. The United States was, in many ways, a new refuge. And so the silent legacy of the Templars may have found its final home not in exile, but in the foundation of a new nation. Still, America's landscape holds stranger clues than mere symbols. In the wilderness of Nova Scotia lies the legend of Oak Island, tied to Templar treasure. But other sites speak not of gold, but of secret knowledge. Some researchers point to the mysterious alignment of landmarks in New England, forming patterns of sacred geometry, triangles, circles, and crosses traced across hundreds of miles. Coincidence or deliberate design? Echoing the Templars' obsession with celestial order, even the layout of Washington, D.C. has provoked centuries of speculation. Pierre L. Enfant's original plans for the Capitol seem laced with geometry streets forming pentagrams, stars, and compass-like alignments, while mainstream historians dismiss this as practical city planning. Others see it as the hand of hidden societies, heirs of the Templar tradition, encoding their symbols into the heart of American power. Legends even whisper that the Ark of the Covenant, another relic rumored to have been found by the Templars beneath Solomon's temple, may have been carried to America. Though there is no proof, stories persist of sacred chests hidden in caves, guarded by secret brotherhoods. In this view, America becomes not just a political experiment, but a vault for humanity's most dangerous truths. But the legacy may not have been only symbolic. Some Native American oral traditions describe men in white cloaks who came from the sea centuries before Columbus. These men, the stories say, brought teachings of building, of astronomy, and of faith. They did not conquer, they guided. Could this be memory of Templar survivors, weaving their knowledge quietly into the lives of those they encountered? The overlap of cultures is difficult to trace, but what is undeniable is the persistence of the Templar cross. It appears in places it should not, etched into stones, woven into Masonic banners, stamped onto artifacts that predate colonial settlement, always hidden, always just out of reach of certainty. And then there are the whispers of a bloodline. If the Templars protected descendants of Christ, as some claim, then perhaps their mission in America was not only to hide relics, but to safeguard people, a lineage that could live free away from the reach of Rome and crown. If so, then America may hold more than Templar treasure. It may hold living proof of the order's most guarded secret. Skeptics, of course, insist this is fantasy. They argue that the Freemasons borrowed Templar imagery for drama, that city plans are coincidence, that the Founding Fathers were practical men, not guardians of ancient secrets. But even they admit the power of symbols. And symbols, once planted, rarely die. The truth may be this: whether the Templars physically stood on American shores or not, their spirit crossed the sea. Their symbols, their secrecy, their defiance of authority, all these took root in a new land that would one day reject kings, embrace freedom, and enshrine hidden messages in its architecture. The silent legacy of the New World is not a castle or a vault. It is a code written into stone towers, carved into maps, whispered in rituals, and stamped onto the birth certificate of a nation. A code that suggests the Templars, long after their supposed extinction, lived on in the shadows, guiding, influencing, and watching. But if this is true, then the greatest question still remains. What exactly were they guarding? Why such secrecy? Why such devotion to silence? The answer may lie not in treasure or symbols, but in the very foundations of history itself. For if the Templars carried more than relics across the sea, if they carried truths that could shake the world, then America was not simply their refuge. It was their final stronghold, and perhaps even now their secrets remain hidden, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. The trail of symbols leads us here to a truth half buried, half visible, like a carving worn by time. But the story does not end with monuments and societies. There is one final chapter, one that forces us to confront what it would mean if all of this were true. Because if the Templars did reach America, if their treasure and secrets were hidden here, then our history is not merely incomplete, it has been deliberately rewritten. As our journey through this mystery draws to a close, one question echoes louder than all the rest. What if it's true? What if the Knights Templar, warriors, mystics, exiles, truly crossed the ocean long before Columbus? What if America was not discovered, but rediscovered, its shores touched by secret hands centuries before the age of exploration? The pieces of the puzzle lie scattered across time. The vanished fleet, the Newport Tower, the Kensington runestone, the Westford Knight, the strange coins, the maps that should not exist, the geometry of cities and symbols, each by itself is ambiguous, dismissed by skeptics, explained away by historians. But when gathered together, these fragments form a shadowy mosaic, one that suggests history has a hidden chapter, deliberately left out of the books we read. If the Templars truly reached America, the implications are staggering. It means that the story of the New World was not one of sudden discovery, but of hidden continuity, that long before Columbus. Knowledge of these lands existed, passed quietly among sailors, guarded by secret brotherhoods, perhaps even suppressed by those who feared its consequences. Why suppressed? Perhaps because knowledge is power. If the Templars possessed maps of America in the 14th century, it would have changed everything: trade routes, empires, the balance of power in Europe. To reveal such knowledge might have risked the wrath of kings and popes. Better, then, to hide it, to preserve it in silence until the time was right. But what, beyond refuge, would have drawn the Templars across the sea, golden land, or something greater? A spiritual quest. Some suggest that America was not merely a safe haven, but a chosen land, a place where relics and secrets could be preserved, where ancient geometry could be laid into the soil, where a new Jerusalem could rise far from the corruption of the old world. The possibility grows even stranger when we consider the legends of the Holy Grail. If the Grail was a cup, it could have been carried west. If it was a bloodline, it could have been hidden in the vast wilderness, sheltered by tribes or cloaked in secrecy. And if the Grail was knowledge, sacred wisdom, forbidden texts, truths that could undermine the foundations of church and crown, then America, distant and untamed, was the perfect vault. Here lies the chilling thought. Perhaps America's very birth as a nation was influenced not only by Enlightenment ideals, by echoes of the Templar vision, a land of freedom, of secrecy, of hidden geometry, a land where symbols whisper of mysteries too ancient to be coincidence. Of course, doubt remains. It always will. The Newport Tower may still be only a windmill. The Kensington runestone may still be a hoax. The Oak Island pit may be nothing more than natural geology. But if even one clue is real, if even one Templar ship touched American shores, then the history we know is incomplete. And perhaps that is the greater truth hidden in this story. Not that the Templars definitively came to America, but that history is never as solid as it appears. History is written by victors, edited by kings, approved by popes. What does not fit the official narrative is dismissed, destroyed, or buried. And yet the stones still whisper, the symbols still appear, the legends still rise. So we are left with questions. Did the Templars bring their treasures to the New World? Did they carve their presence into the bedrock of America? Did their spirit live on in Freemasons, in revolutionaries, in the very ideals of liberty and brotherhood that defined a nation? We may never know for certain. And perhaps that is the final gift or curse of the Templars. They thrived in secrecy. They built their power not only on what they revealed, but on what they concealed. If their legacy reached America, then perhaps it was never meant to be proven. Perhaps it was meant to linger as a whisper, a shadow, a question. And yet, as we look at the unfinished pyramid on the Great Seal, at the crosses etched into weathered stones, at the legends that refuse to die, it is hard not to feel the presence of something hidden, a truth buried just beneath the surface of history, a truth that may never fully be revealed, but will never fully be erased. So tonight, as you drift into sleep, imagine the sails of ghostly ships rising on the horizon. Imagine the red cross fluttering in the wind, far from the eyes of kings. Imagine knights stepping onto a foreign shore, carving symbols into stone, burying treasures, whispering prayers beneath the stars of a land no map yet claimed. Imagine that they are still here, not in flesh, but in symbols, in stories, in the hidden heartbeat of history. And ask yourself one final question. If the Templars were willing to risk everything to reach this land, to hide their secrets in its soil, then what truths lie waiting, even now, beneath our feet? Perhaps one day the earth will give up its secrets. Perhaps one day the stones will speak more clearly. Or perhaps the silence will remain as eternal as the mystery itself. Until then, the Templars remain shadows on the horizon of history, neither proven nor forgotten, neither alive nor dead, guardians of a story too vast, too dangerous, too strange to be written in any book of kings. And maybe, just maybe, America itself is their final testament.